uh, and we are live. So I'm really excited about tonight. So this is going to be fun. Good evening, fellow patriots and investigators. This is Larry Smith coming to you live from Tennessee. Today is August 16th, and it's a Monday. And we're also coming live from Conway, Arkansas. Ellie's here with me tonight, and we're going to do a little scatter reporting where I'll do some reporting, she'll do some reporting. We both have a pretty good report on Afghanistan tonight, so you're going to get a lot of information. So about what we understand about Afghanistan, and in our reporting tonight, Ellie and I haven't shared what we're reporting, and I'm going to report what I have, and Ellie's going to report what she has, and if they don't line up, it doesn't mean that either of us is wrong. What we're going to ask is that you use discernment, and then you come up and do your own research as well, and you can understand what the truth is. I think it's really great to go out and collect information from all different sources, and I have what I call the mosaic approach. I take all data, I put it up. It's like putting it up on a whiteboard, and sometimes things are going to start linking together. And so, with that in mind, I'm going to get started on my reporting. I'm going to do some reporting on some elements, but then I'm going to then I'll get to the Afghan report. I got some Afghan stuff sprinkled in here. So, but anyway, I'm going to start off tonight with the recall in California. They can print their own ballots. They're going to send the voters a PDF file, and they're going to be able to print those ballots themselves. Hey, William, how you doing? And the cheating starts before you even get to vote. Anyway, there's 18 USC U.S. Code, Chapter 115, treason, sedition, and subversion activities. You should read up on this. Okay, that's something you should be looking at. Department of Defense Law of War, Section 11. You should become familiar with this. There's been a rise in plane crashes. And what could be the source of the plane crashes? There has also been a rash of flight cancellations. And we can say, maybe something you should research there. I was looking, I got a video on a couple of videos. One was a Joe Rogan interview with a couple of, one was a ICU person, and the other was a biologist. And they were talking about a COVID immunity. There's a product called ivermectin. And if you take it, what they call a prophylaxis, or taking it daily as a prevention, it can have up to 86% success in keeping the COVID virus away from you. Herd immunity runs about 70%. And there's about 60 ivermectin studies, of which 58 were showing very positive C19 cases. Moving over to the symposium with Mike Lindell. And one of the things I was watching Mike Lindell, and hey, Susan and Mary, how's it going? I listened off and on for about 2 days. And what I came to the conclusion was that they were just preaching to the choir. I didn't see anything new. They did come up with that one county rep from Colorado, Mesa County, I think it was. Tina, I think it was her name. And she brought a couple of images of her of the Big D machine, and it was they saw that before the election and after the election, and it or before a Dominion update and then after the update, and they identified of some files that were missing, and they had to do some more research on that, and 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 I was thinking that um, I had to find some kind of information because he never really showed the PCAP, and he made a big deal about presenting the PCAPs at the symposium, and he never really presented them. And and I was just wondering, well, why isn't why didn't he do that? And the symposium was hacked the entire 3 days, and somebody reported back that the symposium, it was in and of itself a sting operation, and knowing that he made it up that the PCAPs are going to be there, they knew that we were going to be hacked, and so well, Mike Lindell talked about his red team, and their red team was coming on board and everything like that. Well, what this red team was a cybersecurity team that was monitoring all the hacking that was going on there at the symposium, and they put some files up there that related to PCAPs, and those files were hacked. And so, and then they had some reporting come out that was saying that this is invalid data. So they stopped showing the PCAPs, and they just went along with their regular other reports that they were doing. So, but what they did was they caught all these guys that were hacking, and so they know who they are, they know where they're hacking from, and so and they now that they know who they are, what machines they were using, and they're lining it up with machines and locations that they have of people who hacked in the election. So they're going to see if these are the same guys. And so it was like a sting operation, and there's a couple things that they really got out of the symposium, and it wasn't all the Q guys and us investigators. They really didn't present anything new, but the show gathered officials from all 50 states, and the true extent of the election fraud was presented. Keeping in mind that all these people that came from all these states, the only input they really get is from mainstream media, and so they really don't know the extent of which I'll say EF election or anyway. Remember, these officials also watch mainstream media. They are not on Telegram, and they do not listen to us, the truthers. Yes, the symposium may have been more of the same for us, but not for them. And so what the symposium did was actually got in front of all of the legislatures from all 50 states what actually happened. And now they have, I guess there's 15 states that have started the process for asking their legislatures to do an audit. And one of those states is the state of Washington. And so, it really did a good job of bringing out what really happened there during November 3rd. And the second thing that they really wanted to be able to do was to show Dominion that they truly have it all. So, and off onto other news, and this news here is coming from X22. I like Dave from X22. So Kamala Harris was reportedly pressed to give an update on Afghanistan to the American people, but she refused. And White House sources say Kamala could be heard screaming, "They will not pin this S asterisk on me." So, so now the blame game is just going. And remember, I think they have a video of by Dan saying he's not going to blame anybody. Everything rests on him. Well, he took zero, and he started. I think he even blamed Trump. I didn't see his presentation to the country because there's no reason I need to listen to him for me personally. But think logically. The deep state knows and understands they need to distract from what is coming forensically. For what is coming, the forensic audits are coming. Okay, and so they uh, don't know the exact date when the forensic audit's coming, but they know it's coming. So what they need to do from this point on is keep the news cycles clogged with other stories, of which this thing in Afghanistan is one of those narrative distractors. So each move is necessary. The deep state is using these disastrous moves to keep people distracted. The patriots are in turn using them to expose the deep state. So everything they're doing is just being turned right back on them, and a spotlight is being put on them big time. So, we have to ask, why did they start the January 6th commission at the exact movement of when the audit was going to come out? Just a distraction. Why did Biden push the Afghanistan withdrawal to September 11th? They waited for the right moment to spring their distraction. And so, and what I heard earlier today that on July 18th, so CCP had a meeting with the Taliban, and then Biden, shortly after that meeting, withdraw the troops. And so all those is two events that happen. Can they be tied together? I think pretty much they can. But why did Department of Homeland Security put out a notice on domestic terrorism from now until 11/11? Now they set up a perpetual distraction narrative so that they can continue to distract from the audits. Forensic audits, release, censorship, blocking of information, communication blackout, distraction. That's going to be forthcoming. Riots, reports that Trump supporters, Antifa, are violent because Trump was not reinstated in August. Distraction. Buckle up moves and counter moves. The deep state is deploying all assets. If they don't, it's game over. And the Patriots know this. These moves are anticipated. Okay, the cyber false flags are going to be coming one right after the other. Now they're going to expend all their ammunition to try to keep America's attention off of what's coming. It was explained to me in about 2 or 3 different times that what we're looking at is is like a champion or a master chess match. And we've come to the point where Trump, the deep state knows they have lost the match, but they still have several moves available. And so what they're going to do, and Trump knows that they've got them beat. So, but what the deep state is doing is they're going to play out all their moves, hoping that Trump makes a mistake, you see. And so even though they know that they're lost, they're betting the farm, and they're doing all these Hail Marys now to see if they can't make Trump or the alliance White Hats make a mistake. And if they can, then they can go on to the next step. Okay. Exclusive Hollywood crew members reject vaccine mandates, plan to rebel against Biden-connected union leadership. And so the union, I think it's 140,000 members strong, and they've written a letter to their leadership says that we're voting you out, and we're not going to succumb to your mandates. Prime Minister Trudeau calls for a summer general election. He sees the writing on the wall, and so he's trying to get reelected so he can stay in office longer. But with election oversights going on, that might not work out too well. And Texas Supreme Court sides with Governor Abbott. The appeals court overturned his executive order that says that masks can't be mandated, and the appeals court said they could be mandated. The Supreme Court for Texas overruled that, or sided with Governor Abbott, and puts a halt to counties' mask mandates. Now, it doesn't mean that people can't wear masks to school or whatever, but they leave it up to the individual. So they can't mandate wearing a mask. People can wear a mask, but they can't mandate it. So Fulton County Registrar Chief Ralph Jones resigns. So he's getting out before the storm hits in Florida. And the Department of Homeland Security now considering hiring firms to conduct dragnets of social media surveillance to profile Trump supporters as terrorists. This is getting crazy. Karen Fan confirming audit companies are preparing the draft report to present to the Senate team. Senate team will then review for accuracy and clarity for final reports, which will be released to the public. And whether this is true or not, I think they're putting information out there, moves and counter moves. This is a good identification for moves and counter moves. It's a counter move against the deep state. Now the deep state has to, they really have to rev up their moves to try to keep the narrative switched, you see. And the government has America on a fast track to destruction. They have lost all credibility. Ironically, what they used as a pretext to steal the election or COVID is part of their problem. Their tyranny over this virus has turned a large portion of the nation against him. But COVID isn't their only failure. They fail with every single thing they touch. And I'm not talking about our national government. America is being red-pilled one person at a time, and Trump doesn't have to do anything because the political establishment is doing a better job at red-pilling themselves, red-pilling, and the Arizona audit is the go signal. That when you look at the flood, listen to the next one because this will make a little bit more sense. I'm going to look at some Q posts. I'm not going to put them up on the board. I'll just read them to you. Q post 32 on November 1st, 2017. Maybe one day, but it cannot go slow. The initial wave will be fast and meaningful. It will send a signal to others immediately, and you'll see the tide turn. Not even the mainstream media can hide. And rest assured, some will be jailed as deep cover agents. Then we have 2296. You are watching or witnessing the systematic destruction of the old guard. The old guard moving everything over to power to the people. And Red October. So there's an indication that maybe October is when the dam is going to burst. 2298. Twitter has been given the green light. I'll just read it. Twitter has been given the green light to blanket censor all content deemed to threaten their survival or election. Google and Facebook will follow. This was given back in September of 2018. Okay, so, and you're seeing everything play out today. I think that's the reason why Dave put this out here. Expect Calm's blackout attempt, POTUS Twitter. Welcome to the police state. They know if they lose, it's over. It's time to fight. A lot of exclamation points is now. Good versus equal. Humanity is at stake. Drop the memes. Silent majority no more. Be loud. You have a voice. Are you registered? Vote them all out. Prepare. Red October. We stand together. And the last one, this is the last one. It's a Q post 158 on November 20th. Now, this is well before way before today. And it says, who has all the information? And this says no such agency. And what we're believing that to be is the Space Force, but Space Force wasn't created at this particular time. So they said no such agency. When they say NSA, when they just say NSA, that's when the Space Force was put into place. And they say the hunter becomes the hunted. Operations underway in November 20th of 2017. Operators active in November 20th, 2017. This information is real. This information is necessary. Silent war. There's so much disinformation that's being thrown out there today. We have to really use our discernment to pick up what's really true. Militarily, they just don't give up their plans. It's a silent war. The military's running this, and so it's a silent war. But they say some gets out. The Great Awakening, all the information that's being put out is waking people up, okay? Oh, I got to read the next one too. Iron Eagle. And they keep saying Iron Eagle. And Godfather 3, Giuliani identified a long time ago that Biden was the Godfather. And so Godfather 3. And then the hunt for Red October. And then Q Post 679, February 7th, 2018. It says, you have much more than you know. So much. Future proves past. And now we're looking 3 years down the line. We're identifying, things that are happening today. News unlocks the map. And this says equal, plus, 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 plus. Red October, Iron Eagle. And so what is Iron Eagle? And what an Iron Eagle is, it's a full bird colonel who will not be promoted to a general. And so he stopped at the colonel, and he won't be promoted. So they call that an Iron Eagle. And an Iron Eagle in the mix of things today is Christopher Miller. He when he got out of the service and got his appointment, let me see. He was a company commander in the 5th Special Forces Group. He fought Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. In Iraq, he commanded Special Forces units in 2006 and 2007. His promotion to colonel was approved in December of 2009. And he's not going to be promoted to a general because now he's got a civilian job. And so when we look at from a Q perspective, we see that the Iron Eagle reference is probably to Chris Miller. So now I'm going to get into my Afghan report, and this is actually coming from Seth Keshel, Keshel, and he has done some reporting on the election, and he was a speaker at Lindell's symposium, and so I'm just going to read mine. Ellie, jump in because you wanted to make any help on the report. So if you jump in anytime and insert whatever you would like, okay? So so I'm gonna get started on my report. And Seth Keshel, this is all coming from Seth Keshel. Many have asked me for my thoughts on the current situation in Afghanistan, since it figures so critically in my background and analytical qualifications. I will give them here in this space. Be mindful that this may be a long post and may break into multiple sections. I was assigned to the 4th Combat Aviation Brigade out of Fort Hood, Texas, as a second lieutenant, fresh out of the Military Intelligence Officer Basic Course in 2009. I took up my role as the Assistant S2 Intelligence Officer in one of the brigade's 2 attack battalions, Apaches. The S2 serves as an advisor to the commander. In this case, a battalion is commanded by a lieutenant colonel. The Assistant S2 is clearly the new guy learning under the more experienced primary S2, typically.
Answer your phone. It is your destiny.
Is that me? Typically a captain or a senior first lieutenant. The brigade was just returning home from a deployment to Iraq when I arrived. But thanks to the troop surge coming in Afghanistan, was quickly spun up for a new deployment under a new brigade commander, one of the greatest leaders I've ever known, Colonel Dan Williams. Notice of the deployment came in December 2009 when Colonel told me poppy fields in June at a brigade dining event. I had just been promoted to first lieutenant at the time. By April, our brigade was divided into multiple task forces, with the task forces now holding three types of helicopters: Apache, Chinook, Blackhawk, but not Kiowa. I was shifted to another battalion task force that was going to be missing its S2 for the first few months of the deployment due to personal reasons. He was a captain and had experience in Iraq tour the unit completed in 2009. I was fortunate to have been trained by a brilliant officer. First Lieutenant Captain Whiteman was a great guy with whom I've never agreed with politically. He helped me immensely to develop critical S2 skills. I had the same analytical skill then as I do now, but without the combat experience and day-to-day know-how that comes with soldiering. That is why God made NCOs, non-commissioned officers. For several months, my intelligence section operated with three people when we were allotted eight on paper: First Lieutenant Keschel, a Staff Sergeant Head, and Sergeant E5 Millhouse. Staff Sergeant, which is an E6 Head, now retired FFC, Sergeant First Class, was an infantryman by trade who transitioned to MOS. As the NCO in charge, his job was mainly to lead our analyst and perform essential administrative functions. But due to lacking manpower and the demand of 24-hour operations, he was pressed into a more analytical role than his position would typically entail. One of his duties was getting me straight. He laughs still when we talk about the first rocket that landed near us on Kandahar, the first full day in Afghanistan. He didn't move from his bunk. I followed the entire drill, including hitting the deck and then going to a bunker. The next time a rocket hit, I didn't move either. You never forget that level of embarrassment. Over the course of several months, Staff Sergeant Head got me up, set me up for success. Right around the time our captain came in country. My dad died in September. 3 months in, I went home for his funeral, and when I got back, the captain was back. We are the same age. He graduated college a year ahead of me, and therefore was ahead of me in the career progression. We had both been first lieutenants at the same time, and he made captain a year before I did. Going into this deployment, one drawback of battalion staff sections is that officers often hold the same rank and become friends, and then have to report to one another. Of course, there is basic professionalism, meaning that no one will undermine the other who outrank them, but it's not always easy. Captain Colano and I didn't really get along personally during our deployment, but fortunately, we actually became real friends when we returned, and were sent to the captain's career course together in Arizona. We haven't gotten much update on Afghanistan here. He is still in a major, one of the better intelligent minds I met in the Army, a strategist, workaholic, and fitness nut. We gelled pretty well about halfway through the tour and keep enemy fighters, weapons, and supplies out. The forces on the island can then be used to separate insurgent factions from peaceful factions. And once separated, the insurgents can be eradicated. I sank in like the stone on Goliath's forehead, immediately given that I was paid to think strategically. I abandoned all hope that we would ever win the war in Afghanistan. Since I was already in an aviation brigade, I thought of the 30,000 foot level, just as I see the political landscape today. I was at this time looking at upcoming deployments going as far out as 8 years, that I started to see hopelessness in making this my career. Now I'm very glad I began to feel that way. Our unit got to the point with the Apaches were using $7,000 Hellfire missiles to destroy $50 repeater towers on mountainsides made of duct tape and PVC pipe. One time we had to shoot twice. Our pilot teams were hamstrung by our own lawyers, having to call for clearance to fire at enemy fighters who were clearly engaging our ground troops and causing needless casualties. A couple of our pilots were permanently grounded and lost their wings because they had to fire in defense of ground troops and accidentally fragged uh, some with danger close engagements. Coalition partners in our region were giving away communications equipment to the Taliban in exchange to not be attacked. Guess who was getting attacked? Counterinsurgency exists in a textbook at Fort Huachuca. They preach it like it is gospel. If you point out that the only successful modern counterinsurgencies take place on islands or in antiquity, when every living and breathing thing is in a given nation is put to the sword, you get scoffed at. In the textbook, we have our successful decades long counterintelligence operation when the nation, in this case Afghanistan, is able to provide its own security. The Afghan National Army, ANA, and Afghan National Police, ANP, were the two primary entities tasked with learning to stand up and take their own bullets so we didn't have to. Want to know what they were busy doing in 2010 and 2011 tour? They were going out on patrol and selling ammunition to the Taliban and other terror cells. Then they would return to their duty stations and claim they expended however many rounds they sold off and get replenished. And the cycle continued. One time I went for a run when I wasn't on shift just so I could stay in some sort of decent physical condition. I carried my rifle with me and ran with it like a private at Marine boot camp, primarily because you never want to be that guy that loses his weapon in a combat zone, but also because we shared our base with pit vipers, wild dogs, and most notably, Afghans. Keep in mind, these are the ANA, ANP that are supposedly on our side, but one of the biggest threats to coalition forces in the entire country, right behind IEDs, was getting shot in the back of the head at dinner by the ANA or ANP, most senior. Officers who have died in Afghanistan in the past decade have been killed by friendlies, either in cold blood or coordinated suicide attacks, using people on our bases, contractors, ANA, ANP, etc. On that run, I went out a few miles and found myself lost, Lieutenant. Okay, a few turn a few turns around, some Jersey barriers and HESCO baskets later, I find myself on an ANA camp. I don't hide very well, and I saw a bunch pointing going on. I am guessing at the giant American officers surrounded by miniature Afghans, and I booked it out of there. These are our allies. They are the people responsible for guaranteeing the future safety and security of Afghanistan, at least according to the textbook. It was in these months in the transition from 2010 to 11 that I realized counterinsurgency was hopeless. My mind began to think about life not in the military, giving my best years and risking myself for something so futile. I've told the story before in an article about my future assignment to Alaska when I read Liberty Defined by Ron Paul, which cemented in my mind the need to find a new career. I put in my papers to leave just 3 months after reading the chapter pertaining to endless wars. On the current issue itself, the mission in Afghanistan died of a stage 4 cancer that had first been discovered in 2001. As useless as he is, and with his means of occupying the White House being what they are, this is not the complete fault of Joe Biden. It is the summation of 20 years of useless war in a place called Gravy of Empires, a graveyard for goodness sakes, and we thought would turn out different. Most veterans before the internet became the all-powerful self-education tool it is believed in the mission to get even after 9/11. That was my inner drumbeat when I was signing up. We didn't think about the history. We thought about the imagery of all G.W. Bush, phony patriotism, and feeling like we needed to have his back when the media did their thing. We didn't realize the lies of the fake political system and the fake neocon patriotism. The same patriotism that leads to the military bases in Afghanistan to have three contractors for every one soldier standing in the chow line and occupying the phone tent when you want to use a 15-minute window to call home. It is indeed a military industrial complex. What is old is new. The more things change, the more they stay the same. The British tried for many years to pacify Afghanistan centuries ago. Abject failure. The Russians wasted a decade there and were sent running like scalded apes. We spent 2 decades there. You could potentially make the case for justified warfare for a year after 9/11 with valid intelligence on targets. But once the targets became hunted, the ones with strategic value left. Why do you think it is that we liked bin Laden in Pakistan? The Pakistanis acted surprised that he was there, but they knew blood is thicker than water. That is why Karzai said a decade ago that he would side with the Pakistanians over America in a war. I remember commenting on that. If I were president, I would have every single American soldier home by December and let them figure it out. Why all the issues? The nation is and has always been run by warlords. Vacuums continue to open. Yeah, vacuums continue to open and be occupied by the one with the most guns. These are savages. They are people who stone women for learning how to read. Yet our idiot leftists and their media lapdogs have the audacity liken traditional Americans to the Taliban. What a disgusting insult. The warlords do not share Western beliefs or values. They, thanks to their fundamentalist belief systems, do not recognize the dignity of the individual. We have rights in this country because we were founded on the simple belief that man is made in the image of God and therefore deserves dignity. With dignity comes rights. We enshrined them in our founding documents. The people of Afghanistan are viewed as serfs to be ruled. The convenient excuse of extending rights and liberty to Afghanistan was a lie. It is the military-industrial complex speaking. We have domestic problems here that could have been addressed for the entirety of the Afghan war without the loss of life, limbs, eyesight, blood, and treasure in a second Vietnam. This is why neocon warlords like John McCain, Jeff Flake, Dan Crenshaw, Adam Kinzinger, G.W. Bush, and others must be roundly ridiculed, mocked, despised, and rejected. The military is a great place for a boy to become a man. I am glad that I serve because I have the foundation of resiliency, determination, and realism that otherwise would never have developed. Veterans are great employees because they can be in the right place at the right time and the right uniform. Discipline, personal pride, and fitness, physically and ideally mental. All hallmarks modern veterans have. Those veterans will attest to what I'm saying. None of what I wrote is to detract from the bravery of veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan. One of my best friends was a Marine combat engineer captain who has had his life ruined by that stupid war. He is brave, led his men with valor at the cost of concussing himself permanently and undergoing the emotional trauma that has caused great personal hardship. He reminds me of my dad, who dealt with his issues from Vietnam in ways that often caused great pain to others and against his own desires. In summary, though I have wandered, there was never a way to win a war in Afghanistan if we view victory as the locals being able to govern their own country. That was a lie used by the military industrial complex to engage in a war that is 2 decades old long. We were astonished that we were serving there 10 years after 9/11. Now that the number is 20, I was in my career when I showed up there, and just 2 years with just 2 years of service, if I were still there, still in today, I'd be a major a couple of years from lieutenant colonel with 13 years of service. No results. The only way to win is to destroy everything that breathes and start over. I do not endorse that method because there are many innocents in Afghanistan, and there's no public will to do that, fortunately. That is how things were done in the days of Alexander the Great and Genghis Khan. But since Afghan is the size of Texas, bordering 6 nations, there are few strategic targets worth eliminating now. We are eliminating pawns. 19-year-old paid $100 and given an AK-47 and a couple of Chinese rockets to fight for their own country. The knights, rooks, and bishops are hiding out in Pakistan or Iran, funneling money, explosives, and other weaponry into the country to maim and kill coalition forces. Our leaders knew this all along, but continued. Trump knew this, but he knew that if he pulled the plug immediately, he would be blamed for exactly what you see going on right now. The same scenes from Black Hawk Down, with our equipment and unit regalia being paraded down dusty roads to our humiliation as a nation. Trump did what he could to empower our generals to make the kinetic decisions to get this as much done as possible, and he dwindled troop levels down enough to pave the way for the. But 2 decades of horrific decision making had its consequences. I hope this sheds light on the true picture in Afghanistan. It was all doomed to fail, and now you see it all coming to fruition. Okay, Ellie. So, while we're waiting for Ellie to get back, um, well, there was something. They had a picture of Biden in the conference room in at Camp Davis. And what was really unique about the picture, he was at a conference table and he was looking at a TV screen. And what was really unique about Biden sitting there was he was by himself. He didn't have any advisors. And some information has been coming out today about if you look at the clocks on the board above that TV, the clocks were wrong. I guess they were the time difference between France and Moscow were wrong, and it's because Moscow doesn't have a daylight savings time, and France does, and so it was a 1 hour, and it was supposed to be 2 hours, I think, or vice versa, one way or the other, but that led people to believe that the people there at Camp David didn't know how to set clocks, which is I think Don Jr. put out that they wouldn't be a minute off, not any more than they would be an hour off. But what they're understanding is that photo that was taken right there was actually taken in February, and then at that particular point in time, the clocks would be right. And because how Russia doesn't do daylight saving times, then the clocks would actually be correct. And so I think it's just pointing out how the deep state just throws pictures up there and tries to make you think that Biden is paying attention to what's going on. And the other thing up on the TV screens, they were showing all these people that are, I guess, in the CIA. And so what happened in putting that picture up there, the White House was outing CIA agents, showing pictures of CIA agents, and didn't Bush get in trouble for outing a CIA agent or something like that? But what they had here was they had this up on the TV. They had agents up there and with their picture, and anybody blows it up, they can identify who these people are now. So So I'll stop there and let Ellie give us some good information.
Good information. I don't know about that. You know, the White House went pretty silent, and you were just talking about the pictures. Now, my sources told me that Biden and most of the political elite were in bunkers. That's why the silence. And that when they went on vacation, they knew this was going to happen. So, you know, that's just what my sources were telling me. And I watched the UN conference this morning, and what came out afterwards from the people in Afghanistan was that none of these countries were very happy with Biden. That when he decided to make the swift decision in July 11th, that he never did tell in any of the other countries or communicate with them to let them know the plan of just automatically pulling everything out. So they felt very betrayed. Now, they reported shots fired, and everybody's seen the pictures of it. And what it actually was is the first two shots were the Taliban shooting at people that were trying to flee and get past their border. So they shot at the people trying to get through, and a bunch of them, of the crowd, actually went way far down, about a mile, and was jumping over the fences to get out because of the fear of the Taliban. The other ones were the U.S. Soldiers firing in the air to get all the people to run towards the airport terminal to get them away from Taliban and being shot. And then at the same time, there was an explosion, and it seems like it was Russia was had blown up a couple of the planes were in the air that filtered over into their airspace. So I'm just trying to see if they did stop the flights because of the people that were jumping on the planes. Now, they showed one plane with everybody piled onto it, and then they showed one plane with someone falling off.
Two people, yeah.
Well, actually, they said when one of the first flights went out, or I should say, every flight that went out, there was people falling off the planes, and even the helicopters. So as some of these other countries were fleeing, they were jumping on the planes, and they only showed just that one, but they said there was at least 8 flights where 1 to 8 people were just falling onto the tarmac. They did, of course, they're not going to show it though. So
the one that I saw was a C-17, and those are just gigantic planes. I mean, just really big. So they're pretty good size. So a lot of people can jump on it.
Now, the other thing was the Taliban and Al Qaeda. They had, you've mentioned going back in time a little bit. Now, the Clintons were informed, and it's in document form. They were told in 1996 that these were terrorists, and it was a terrorist group that was growing, and that they need to be aware of this. And that was before 9/11. Now, according to what was warned to them, they were warned at least 20 times between 96 and when they got out of office, and then it went into the Bush administration. And not only was it coming from our own CIA, but it was coming from MI6 out of the UK. Is it MI6 or 5?
Well, They have both.
David,
They have MI5 and
so
MI6.
they were warning them that they were actually building up, and they were building up in Pakistan to start. And then there was rumors of Afghanistan. So it really made no sense when we attacked Iraq. But when I did the show on hunting ISIS, it was basically to clear out the Afghanistan troops for Al Qaeda and Taliban and ISIS back then to spread throughout Iraq and take it over. That was the original plan. And this, they say, was real close to 2001. MI6, the Foreign Service, then it was MI5. It was intelligence that was sending over the warnings that they were getting really bad. And then now when they went after Bin Laden, now they had already had reports that most of the terrorists were hiding in the Afghan mountains. Now you probably know more about this than me, and that it wasn't Iraq, but they were actually, when it was almost like they diverted them over to Iraq so the Taliban, Al Qaeda could run to Afghanistan, Pakistan, to be able to hide in the Kandahar Mountains. Now, I don't know if you heard anything on that. So, and then when Obama got in office, and we had all the leaders of the Taliban and ISIS, quite a few of them in Gitmo, he did release all of them. And one of the biggest leaders that was released from Gitmo, he is now the leader of Afghanistan in the Taliban. This was something that was promised to this guy. And he's even in the pictures when they're sitting at the palace. He's the one in the center, and then he's the one that's been speaking. So he was one that we released from or Obama pardoned from Gitmo. And this came to light. And not only that is over the years, not only have we been giving each one, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iraq, and I told this on my show the other day, is they were giving them $200,000 for the people, for aid for the people. And the Taliban and Al Qaeda and ISIS, of course, take it. And it really goes to show that even World Health Organization sent over just pallets or ships full of aid for Afghan people. Well, Taliban's already got a hold of it, took it, and it's in their possession for their army. So they're already taken away from the people and hurting the people. Not only that, is when the first amount of troops that were removed from Afghanistan, that is when Al Qaeda slipped in, and their tactics is they would go into one city and they would take over it, and they're really super nice, and they get everybody on camera. They go into the other city, and that's where they were torturing, beheading, burning people, raping the women, and they would keep that on tape. So then when they went to the next few cities, they would show those videos and say, you could choose this way or you could choose that way. And of course they were following. Now the other thing, and I even told Larry and I even told Mary this today, they are known for getting 100,000 or close to it, as many as they could get. They'll go into the city where their capital's at, and of course force the mayor or whoever's in charge or their leader resign in front of the people, making it look like the city had fallen. And that was how they managed to take over so many cities throughout the country very quickly. Do you have something to say, Larry?
Oh, lots, but I didn't want to interrupt. I was,
So,
I was trying my
um,
best to be patient.
so not only that is during the Obama administration, one of the things that they were doing, and this will really get you, is there was a lack of um, vest, protection vest, bulletproof vest. And come to find out that all the ones that were being shipped over there were being shipped to ISIS and Taliban and Al Qaeda. So that's where all the vests went to. And according to what my sources at the Capitol say, Nancy Pelosi and Schumer and a few of them knew about this. Now, these are people that have been, Larry, realize these people have been in for about 40 years, 30, 40 years. They have known about the Taliban. They've known about ISIS and all of these guys. They've known the terrorists and done nothing about it all these years. Even Biden, being vice president, never really put the effort to help any of the countries around Afghanistan, because see, you're talking a lot of little tiny countries like Tajikistan and some of these other ones that now are in fear because they really don't have an army. They have Russia, and now Russia is in the process of protecting these smaller countries. And get this, yesterday and today there was American planes, and they said they knew that it wasn't Americans because they're not flying no more. So they knew that it was the Taliban in these planes that was actually buzzing over Russian troops. And so Russia shot them down, and they shot down 2 planes. And they went and got them, and it was definitely Arab, they said, Taliban. And one was hurt, and one they never did find. They said he ejected, and they never did find him. So that's when Russia decided to move a massive amount of tanks to the border, on their border. Now, you were right about the meeting with China, and it was China and Russia, actually. They had a meeting a few days beforehand with China, and now Russia has got a meeting with the Taliban tomorrow, and China is in a few days later on this week. And so Russia is saying, you're not going to be firing on our country in these little separate countries, or states, Tajikistan, and there's a few others. I think that there was a guy in here earlier that was mentioning some of these smaller countries, and they want the Muslims out. These are basically Christians in a lot of these sectors, and even Putin tolerates them being Christians. And I mean, to a certain point, he's he did away with Jehovah's Witnesses, but at the same time, he has a big, I guess, a heart for the Christians in these countries, and he's not too big on the Muslims, though, not too big.
Are you talking about Putin?
Yeah.
Well, Putin has made Russia a Christian country.
See, and so he really doesn't have no toleration for the Muslims. And so my question was, when I started digging into why they would want, to take that little bit of Afghanistan, and it's only to spread their to basically get another country. But come to find out, they don't want terrorists to have the country. They will be able to vote as a nation with the UN, and so get this. So if he is going to move in there, he's going to, what I'm hearing is stop the terrorism. So actually, he's going to go after them. At the same time, you can't really believe the propaganda because he could just be working out a deal and using them. Uh, so
You
we
can't,
won't know
you
within
can't,
the
you can't go by anything that's on the mainstream media.
bingo, bingo. And I'm hearing both ways. He's either going to take them out or
You think about
he's,
Putin again?
yeah, Putin.
He's not going to get involved in.
And then now we have China. So now China is now they're want to meet with them. And China now, I don't know who did it in the chat, but they said that China's been funding Pakistan to train the Taliban. And when I heard that, I thought, no, 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 no. They don't need it for training. They just need it for military equipment. Uh, uh, these are terrorists. These are, they'll behead you, they'll burn you, and not only that is that they have over 88,000 at the airport that are running from the Taliban. And huh?
It's my understanding that the Taliban, for all intents and purposes, are college age people, and a lot of them are students. And basically, what they want to do is just make money, but they are hardcore uh, Islamists. But as you see, where some people trade the Taliban weapons and everything and ammunition to not be attacked. Well, that's the Taliban mode of operation. So for the most part, the Taliban is out there to actually just make money, and since Biden isn't a businessman, he doesn't know how to deal with that kind of faction. Um, and Trump's plan was, which was thrown away, was a step-by-step plan to, to leave soldiers in place until the very end, and then pull the soldiers out, and so you wouldn't have this type of situation that you have today. One of the things that one of the things that they're having a real problem with today, and it wouldn't have mattered if you had a controlled exit or chaotic exit as you have today, is that there's so many people that have converted to Christianity that there's like a genocide going on the Christians. So people are trying to get the missionaries out as fast as they can, but they all got stuck there.
Now, as far as the Trump plan, now see, this is what I was hearing over there from one of the sources I had. Now, when Trump first put the plan together, it was to take out so many, and then he left it up to Biden. Well, according to what was going on by February.
When you say he left it up to Biden, it was part of the White House plan was to have Biden come into office. The plan was to have the military out by May. Biden extended that into September because he wanted to have the distraction against the Arizona audits, and so he extended that out to September. And by throwing away the Trump plan, there was no organized withdrawal to get all of the equipment, the diplomats, and the people out, and then the military was supposed to be the last to withdraw. But that was supposed to happen by May of 2021. Trump made an agreement with the Taliban so that it could be an organized withdrawal, and they ended up going to have a turnover at the end of the withdrawal. None of that has happened, and so.
Okay, so this is what I heard. Now, when Biden in February, okay, we're talking this past February, when he was actually going to pull this in May, but according to what I was hearing over in India and then parts of Israel and Saudi, there was actually over 11,000 troops were over there, and they were doing regular sorties over the country. And so so Biden, there was a way more troops than he thought. And so then he was going to start pulling out a bunch without letting everybody know, according to what India was saying, that he didn't want anybody to know there was all these troops still over there and still in combat, because we were being told that, it was just at the embassy and we were slowly moving out. We weren't really doing much when there was ground to ground combat going on. And to keep the Taliban from coming from Pakistan into Afghanistan. So really, Trump was going to downgrade very, very slowly, and he was going to make sure that the Afghan army or military was strong before he left. He never intended to have them just crumble under like what we've seen them do.
Yeah,
but now realize over half of these, when they went through these towns, they were joining up with Taliban. So the Taliban forces were already there.
Okay, the Taliban forces at the time, actually, when Trump was in office, they had probably secured about 40% of the country. And they were in small territories, but for the most part, Taliban had already engaged and gone into a lot of. I think the number was about 40% of the country was already in the possession of Taliban. That was back in 2018. So, or actually before Trump took office, I think. But I'd have to go back and double check that. But the Taliban had already taken over a good portion of the country.
Yeah, and not only that, but they were being trained in Pakistan. Pakistan has pretty much admitted it in the last 2 weeks to India TV that they stayed quiet on it and they were helping them out. But it was never meant for them to go in and take over Afghanistan. But, propaganda, you just can't believe it. So I always believe the opposite. And not only that, they have got just about every country. There was 60 that has now said that Biden is responsible for all this, that he basically let terrorists build up. And it was even mentioned that Biden was maybe using them for a type of putting terrorists into the UK and into Italy and Cyprus and into Europe, that because the first places that Biden wanted to send all of those fleeing was in these countries, and it wasn't they were complaining, well, why aren't you taking any? Well, then he started saying he was going to take them. But it's all men. There's no women. It's all basically men from the ages of like 20 to 35, which, you said they're all college students that are, so they're bringing them in over here and their families. And, and the UN, every single one of them today said, you have to be nice. You can't be terrorist. You can't torture people. And they've been doing this for how long? 40 years? 30 years?
Well,
20 years?
Well, Russia got kicked out. So that was a long time ago. The British got kicked out. But I'd like to go back to when we talk about 9/11, okay? When we talk about that, the purpose of going into Afghanistan was to get the heroin and opium. When the Taliban had pretty much before the U.S. went in there, the Taliban had eliminated most of the poppy fields, and so when America came back in, that's the poppy fields or the opium is one of the cash cows for the CIA. And so they opened up all the poppy fields and got those operational. So that was the primary role for going into
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan, was to get the drug running going. Iraq, believe it or not, they did. Iraq at a particular point in time did have weapons of mass destruction, but they moved them all over to Syria. Okay, prior to the war, but the reason why the America went into um, Iraq and then eventually Libya, one of the things was that they stopped buying oil with American dollars. They started using their own currency to buy the oil, and that's where the petrodollar is. The U.S. made an agreement with the OPEC that if you were to buy oil, you had to buy it with American dollars, and that's why it's called the petrodollar. And so, Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein quit buying oil with American dollars and started buying it with their own currencies. And so they wanted that to be put to a halt. The secondary, and it was almost a primary role going into Iraq, was they had a lot of ancient artifacts. And if you recall, there was a museum or something like that that was completely raided when the troops got to Baghdad. There's a big museum that was raided. And Gaddafi too. Yeah, Gaddafi was buying oil with actually a gold-backed currency. And so, but they had a lot of artifacts from ancient times in Baghdad, and the U.S. raided all of those artifacts. And so that was the secondary reason for going into Iraq. So that's it.
I didn't know that one. Another thing that was mentioned today, and it was through Holland and Canada, is they were receiving cries of help in some of the first cities that were fallen. And they said they had sent it to the Biden administration quite a few times. And they were never answered on it. So that was the reason why Norway and Canada called the UN meeting today. But then when you listen to their statements, it's like everybody else. Well, we don't want the Taliban to hurt anybody. But they were the ones that did call it. And it was only because they said for the last 4 to 5 months, they have been sending help messages to the Biden administration in the U.S. saying you might not want to back out because the Taliban is going through the country very quickly. And we're in fear because we have our embassies here, very few our own military, and we depend on the United States to defend us. And if you pull out too quick, then they're just going to sweep through the country. And this was back in April. It was April 18th, I believe, is when those messages were sent. And they were telling Biden, things need to stop. Everything, halt, whoa, and don't take no more out until we can have a plan. And do you have a plan? And we need to know. And of course, they never did respond. So the Biden administration was ignoring not only Canada, but Norway and their embassies that were warning him and starting in February that this wasn't going to work. And so, that just goes to show you they were going to do this and just pull the rug out from underneath all these different countries. And did you know, if you heard anything of why they would do that, or the United States or Biden would do that to our allies? that was kind of one of my questions to you, Larry. So,
You know, Biden has a puppet master. Okay, so the deep state is planning on doing certain things, and since Trump disrupted their 16-year plan, they're going 1,000 miles an hour to try to get back on schedule on their plan, because they're trying to get the first 4 years that Hillary was supposed to have back, and so anything they're doing now, well, where they used to do everything step by step by step, and nobody noticed what they were doing. Well, now they don't have that luxury. The white hats are breathing down their neck, and like I said earlier, the chess game has pretty much been won, and they know that their time is getting close. They're trying to get Trump to make a mistake, and they're not paying attention to everything that they're doing, and they're actually making a mess of the world, and trying to get back on schedule. Everything they're touching now is just falling apart. And there's a question that I wanted to answer that was out there, Ellie. I think Lacey was asking if the moon landings were faked. And this one, I have a pretty good answer for you. The first moon landing that they had, it was real. They landed on the moon, okay? The first one where they landed on the moon. But what they found when they landed on the moon, the ridge above them on the moon was full of spacecraft and aliens, and they got angry because the U.S. landed on what they termed was their territory. And so the aliens there told them to leave and to never come back. And so any further moon landings after that, it's my understanding that they made it up. It's not that they can't go to the moon, because they're already on the moon and Mars. And so it was just kind of crazy that they told them never to come back. And when you hear and listen to NASA, they're always saying, well, we got to go to Mars. We got to go to Mars. They never talk about going back to the moon. So that's my understanding. That's what I've. Basically, yeah, they told them to leave the moon and never come back.
well, Larry, when I was out there in California and I was managing one of the restaurants, I want to say Armstrong. I could be wrong. One of them. One of the
Armstrong is the guy that planted the flag, right?
What used to come in and get food about once or twice a week, and that was something I talked to him about. Maybe he was just lying to me, but he said no, we really did land, and he said it was one of the most exciting. He said, breathtaking. That when it was mentioned, one small step for mankind.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He said, basically, after they'd all gotten back in, they looked at one another and said, that line will become famous, because that first step, when they stepped on the actual moon, he said, it just take your breath away. He said it was exciting. Their heart was beating. At the same time, the wow factor. Then this could be dangerous. All the emotions, they said, hit them on that first step. And then when it was said, and then they get back in, they said that line might be famous. And so I believe they did. I don't know about the rest of them. I just know that Larry could verify this. We had the old telescope that Dad got us, and we were all looking for little people walking around on the moon. I don't know who it was that told us that. I don't know, Larry. It might have been you, because you were a joker back then. Or it was Dad that said, you just got to keep looking. You'll see them walking around on the moon. So me and half the neighborhood were all taking turns looking for the astronauts walking on the moon with a telescope that you could barely see the craters with. So, that's my experience with it. Now, pretty much what the allies now are basically saying, and this was as of 10 p.m. Afghanistan time, that Americans have cut and run. They are on the side of the Taliban, and that we need to stop Biden, that our country basically needs to impeach him because they have been crying for help since July 8th, and their cries have been ignored. He could have made policy changes 6 months ago, and he didn't. And they feel that, get this, all the allies and even most of the Arab countries over there said if Trump was in office, this never would have happened. And then and some of the other parts of Afghanistan, the Taliban is there patrolling the cities, are saying death to America. They're chanting and trying to get people to chant it with them, of death to America. So as of today, they were told to be nice, and now they're chanting death to America. But our allies have basically, they are calling for Trump to return to fix the problem. And that's close to 40 countries at this point. So, and this was today. This is a report that I got from India today. So most of our allies are now blaming Biden for all of this. They want Trump to come back and try to fix this before the terrorists decide to take other countries. This is their fear. Is the Taliban and ISIS and Al Qaeda, with the three of them. Now it was first. Now maybe I might have this wrong. It was, I believe it was Al Qaeda first, Taliban, then ISIS. Larry, do you know?
Say that again.
Was it Al Qaeda, Taliban, and then ISIS, or was it Taliban before Al Qaeda?
The only people in Afghanistan.
I think it was Al Qaeda first.
No, the only people in Afghanistan are the Taliban. ISIS and Al Qaeda are forming in other places. They're just the people in Afghanistan are the Taliban. Al Qaeda and ISIS are being allowed to form in other countries.
Okay, so when 9/11 hit and Bush got basically the Bin Laden family out of Florida. Now you know that. Then he had met with them over in Saudi. And that's when he was looking.
Bin Laden. I don't think it was Bin Laden's family. I think it was the royal family.
Was it the royal? I heard Bin Laden family.
No, there was.
But it might have been the royal family.
Actually, Bin Laden's brother was given a presentation in one of the towers, and he passed away during the event.
Oh, I didn't know that. But anyway, from what they were saying was, when they had, when Bush had that meeting, is when they knew that ISIS was being formed. And then when it went into the Obama administration, Obama knew that they had already splintered, and because of Taliban and Al Qaeda being older guys, the older terrorists, that ISIS was those young college kids you were saying. And that's when basically we were giving them so much funding from the poppy fields. I don't know if you've heard about this. This is all that's been coming out today that I was grabbing.
Okay.
And this is coming from Israel.
Okay. You have,
and so,
but when if you look at Taliban and the ISIS, they're two different completely factions. ISIS wants to form a caliphate and take over all of the Middle East and the world as a caliphate. And that's what ISIS is all about.
So that's where these other countries are afraid, because now you have Taliban's got theirs, Now, Al Qaeda is already looking at Pakistan or somewhere else, one of the other smaller countries. And of course, ISIS, they want to take over the world. Well, there has been a report.
So does Turkey.
Huh?
So does Turkey.
Yeah.
Erdogan.
So they have been letting, we've been letting all these people over the border. And according to what was said today, that according to what the Taliban has disclosed, that there is close to 10,000 ISIS members now in the United States or more. It could be closer to 50,000.
Well, I understand that a lot of the people coming, there's two elements. I got two things to report. 70%, there's a poll today, 70% of America disapprove of Biden and what he's doing in the Taliban or the Afghanistan. Obama had to shut down his Instagram today because he's receiving so many negative Instagram things. But I lost my train of thought. What were we just talking about? Quickly remind me. Oh, the border. Obama, prior to leaving office, he created an organization. I think it's called OFA, something for America. But what they were doing is they were training militant people down in Venezuela, and so they were training and so they have upwards of 60,000 or more that have come through the border. Of concern to me, I guess the Taliban released 5,000 terrorists in jails in Afghanistan, and so there's a potential that they're headed our direction. So so with the borders being open, is just the armies are just coming through. Now, when I say that, the white hats we're saying that Trump and his cohorts, the alliance, have a plan. Are they capturing all these people coming across the border, and when they go on these buses, they're taken to a detention camp or a FEMA camp or something like that? I don't have any evidence on that, but
no. So far, what I'm hearing from the FEMA camps, they haven't started putting anybody in yet, but they're fully staffed.
Oh, they were fully staffed when Bush was in office. So
now,
and believe it or not, some of the FEMA camp or facilities that support the FEMA camp is Walmart. So keep that in mind too.
Yeah, well, and ISIS basically it would be the ones to because David said the Taliban isn't ISIS. No, they're not.
No, they're not.
But the thing is
they're not even
Obama had listed them as a JV varsity team. They were already huge. There was quite a few of them, and
McCain was a big promoter for ISIS, and
okay.
they were supplying a lot of the weaponry to the ISIS there in Benghazi, and that's one of the big issues about Benghazi is they got caught because remember a year before the Benghazi, what happened was the SEAL Team 6 helicopter was shot down, and what they found was that
Black Hawk Down.
No, the SEAL Team 6, the one that captured Bin Laden, supposedly captured Bin Laden. Well, their helicopter was shot down. I think 28 people died, something along that line. Well, the rocket that shot it down was an American rocket launcher, and it came out of Benghazi. And so they were able to, by the metal parts that they, from the rocket that hit the helicopter, they're able to identify who manufactured it and everything like that from the metal and all that stuff, the forensic for doing that. And the rocket actually was American made, and it came out of Benghazi. And so ambassador that got killed over there, it was a suicide mission for him to go over, and he was supposed to cover all that up. And so, and then once he got it all covered up, his life was over because they didn't want any loose ends. So,
No witnesses.
Huh?
No witnesses. That's Hillary's favorite line.
Yeah, and like she said, at this point in time now, what difference does it make? You know, so basically that's the whole Benghazi element, and they wanted to do away with Gaddafi because he was making his currency gold back, and he was buying gold. I mean, buying oil without American dollars. So
now I heard Gaddafi was seeing that the socialist program, or socialist, having his country socialist, wasn't working, and with the gold back, he was going to capitalism.
Well, actually, he was more capitalism than you would believe. He was creating higher education colleges and stuff like that, and getting women to go and everything like that. He was pretty much working towards the capitalism when he was taken out.
Yeah, that's what I heard too, and that was something that, I guess you would say, according to Bernie Sanders, isn't allowed. So, good old Bernie Sanders. But pretty much back what I was saying with ISIS. Basically, ISIS wants their own country because Taliban's got theirs and Al Qaeda wants theirs. So according to Russia, what they're looking for is to take over some of these other countries. And of course, they're looking at the whole, the Russian countries that are sitting right on the borders of Afghanistan. And then at the same time, you got India saying, no, they're looking at us. So really, a lot of those countries are in fear, knowing that they're waiting for them to come for them next.
Well, when you try to put Russia into that particular mode, keep in mind that Russia is part of BRICS, and BRICS is trying to stabilize the world, you know, and so I don't, because part of BRICS is Russia, India, Brazil, and China, and so but no, and keeping in mind that when you talk about China, you're not talking about China. You're absolutely not talking. You're talking about the CCP. So,
Right.
okay, and you have to differentiate. I was going to go back to 9/11 a little bit too. Just like in Israel, you have to separate the Israel people from the Zionist Mossad.
Yes.
And so the Zionist Mossad is just like the deep state in the U.S. and around the world. And keeping that in mind, when we talk about who is responsible for 9/11, and I think it was David that said it was Saudi Arabia and our government, you need to add to that mix who is responsible there. You have to add the Zionist Mossad because they were a big part of that. And the Zionist Mossad is the big element behind Epstein and all the child trafficking and all that. It's the Zionist Mossad who's behind all of that. And Q has said all along that Israel's going to be last, and so Israel's going to be dealt with. I heard today that Netanyahu is no longer part of the Knesset. He's no longer prime minister, and he's in the U.S. today meeting with Trump. And so, I just listened to a Likud MK out of Israel, and he said that they're about ready to kick the prime minister out of position and put Netanyahu back into office. And The guy that was His Glory is the station I was listening to, and um, he asked him, well, can you do that without an election? And he says, well, we can have an election, but in the Israel parliament, he says, the risk that we're in as a nation, we don't have a luxury of waiting for an election to have security for our country. He says we can kick the prime minister out and bring somebody in immediately if we think the security of our country is at risk. He says we don't have a luxury of time in protecting our country. So they're looking at, there's a potential that Netanyahu will be coming back as the prime minister for Israel. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and the way that they were going about that. And I just can't see if Russia is tooting its horn. I think it's for show and not. I don't think anything is really planned. And
no, you mentioned Israel. You know, there was 2 rockets fired, or 3 today.
And the guy, I heard that in this interview, and he said that the horrible thing about that whole situation was that the prime minister didn't react to it. So,
did you hear what it was over?
Huh?
Candy bars. I'm serious.
Why am I not surprised?
Okay, what it was is Palestinians and Hamas and Hezbollah, they get snacks, and it's their way of being able to sell it to the people, and then the money goes to Hamas or Hezbollah, whoever is needing it for arms or military or whatever they're going to use it for. Well, they've been doing this for a very long time. Well, out of the blue, Israel had caught the shipment and figured out what it was, so they kept it. Well, in retaliation, Hamas said, you're not going to have our candy bars. And they 3 missiles. So it was over candy bars, this last few.
Well, so another issue that our investigators should be aware of is that when we look at Iran and you say that Iran is an Islamic nation, I want you to know that primarily only the leadership in Iran is Muslim. Iran is actually a Persian nation. They're not Arab. And so a good portion of the populace are Persian. And so they don't really necessarily go along with the Arab faction. And so that's why you see them going against them protesting and expecting, wanting the U.S. to interfere with them so that they can get rid of that leadership. So basically, Iran's ready to come together with the world peacefully. But it's the leadership.
You look at all of the protests going on, and Iran has got one of the biggest for the people that are basically the same as all the other socialist countries, that they're starving. Not only that, they're losing their power and water. And that's the Persians you were talking about. And not only that, you're looking at Damascus and Lebanon is to the point where they're ready to get the United States. I doubt if Biden will act on it, but they're looking at having the United States get Hamas or Hezbollah out of Damascus because they're starving their people to death. And we got it quite a few. Iran, Syria. Now we've got Damascus and Lebanon. Gaza's the same way. And now, what really gets me was, I told this to my viewers the other day, is Hamas moved the missile system by truck into a neighborhood, and they were going to shoot these missiles off. Well, the neighbors came out and grabbed up the guys, beat them up, basically tied them up, and took the missiles and gave them to the other side. They gave them to Israel. and had these guys locked up and said, well, if you're going to fire these missiles, Israel's going to only fire them back into our neighborhood, and they're going to blow our people up. So yeah, they got beat up and detained, and they did give the missiles to Israel, supposedly.
Okay, now there's also a difference. I wish I could remember this. My age is really starting to show. But in Iran, they have a different sect of Islam that's in Iraq. Okay, and that's why they're always at war. There's Sunni and there's Shiite.
Right.
And I think Iran is the Sunnis and Iraq is the Shiites. And the difference is the Shiites want to create a caliphate and take over the world. Iran is Sunni, and what they want to do is create world chaos to bring the 12th Imam back and rule over the world. And so that's why Iran is pushing, or the Iran leadership is pushing so hard to get a nuclear weapon, because if they get one, they're going to use it. And it's for the purpose of bringing the 12th Imam back. And so from a religious perspective, that's the understanding I get from what's going on in that part of the world.
Let's see, there was now the big thing that I was hearing from about Nancy Pelosi is, and I've told quite a few, I probably even told my own viewers, is when they first started getting MS-13 over and protected them in sanctuary cities, and then they opened up the sanctuary cities so then they could open up the border. They were hoping to open up the border for the flood of these terrorists to come in. And that's when we were seeing the terrorist camps that were popping up over the years. And they were starting to get the funding from Soros, but not only that, but they were being trained down in Mexico. So the thing about it, so we got MS-13, and then we started seeing Houthi started pouring in. I don't know if anybody realized that, but then there was Boko Haram, and that is about the time when they started supporting Antifa and BLM and the Black Panthers, and wanting to defund the police.
Is Boko Haram out of Africa?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then it moved on to the military. And then, so what I was hearing out of my sources that run around the Capitol is it was mentioned so many times that Nancy Pelosi and the political elite, is how they tell me, they couldn't get the police department to back them up on a police state. They couldn't get the military to fight for them. So their only option was to get not only ISIS and get them pouring over the border, but then the few meetings that Nancy Pelosi had in 2013, let's see, it was 2011, then she went back in 2013 and right before the 2016 election, and she took Kamala Harris with her, not only into Mexico to supposedly talk to the president, but I heard they had both went and talked to the cartel. But then they went to Guatemala, and then they went to Honduras, which is the same places they keep going to. And these are supposed to be, they call it the open freeway. So when the terrorists are coming from the Middle East over, they hit these, what they call open freeways, that are run by the cartel and some of the different cartel, to where they get the free range to get, they either fly them in, or they were using the tunnels, and then they were hiding them in a large amount of them. They were hiding in the mosques, the Islamic centers. They had the underground bunkers, and they were hiding them there, and then they would distribute them all over the United States. And this was basically Nancy Pelosi had known about. Now, like I said, Larry, this is coming from my sources that get to move around the Capitol and in and out of these offices. And so this is what they're hearing and reporting back to me. So basically, Nancy Pelosi and Schumer and a few others, and probably Obama, is basically going to use this. The terrorists coming in, MS-13, is training the gangs across the United States, as well as even some of these others that have come in that they gathered along the way to join up with them. And so this will be the basically Pelosi's army to take down the conservatives because of the guns. They can't get the guns away. And so this is their plan, is to use thugs and terrorists to as the police state. It's never been about these counselors, because they themselves know it's stupid that they're going to get a counselor to go take a gun away from a gangster. No, it's all been a farce, a cover up, and they are going to use the basically terrorists and the gangs to try to take our country down.
Well, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're right at the cusp of things turning around. And like I said, Red October, I'm not going to give any dates. We've already made that mistake so many times that I don't want to do that anymore. But there's something, I saw something up here that they talked about the clocks on the wall in Camp David, and that was Frogman, Benedict. But what I said earlier in the broadcast when I first started, the clocks on the wall at Camp David were off, and it was Russia and London, I think, were the two countries. Russia doesn't have daylight savings time, and so it was understanding that the people who set the clocks there got it wrong, or this is a picture from February when the clocks would have been right at that time. So that's some of the discussion that I've heard about on the clocks between Russia and London. That was the Camp David. So basically, Russia isn't on daylight saving times, and so the clocks would have been right if that picture was taken in February. So and Biden was at Camp David in February. So. Did I lose your train of thought, Ellie?
No, I was just looking to see if I forget. The only other thing I got was they did find mass graves in one of the first cities that they took down, and they were basically did a lot of beheading of Christians to start with, and also the women. They were raping them. And of course, then the women are freaking out, and now they're trying to tell the Taliban to play fair with them, but I don't see it happening. But they did find a mass grave of beheaded women and children, and some of the Afghan military, and there was about 100 of them in a mass grave. So the torture's already started. And, now the women are saying they don't know what they're going to do. And you heard me say earlier, I said, run, don't stay there. You know what they're going to do. And they're going to, the same way as they did with the Yazidis, they're going to take the women and they're going to marry them as young as they can and have as many kids as possible. India said that the average Taliban, ISIS, or Al Qaeda man has approximately 20 children. It's like, yikes. Larry, our nephew, might catch up to him. I have a nephew that's got a lot of kids. You know he's gonna be calling me tonight saying, "Hey." But no, they were finding the mass grave of the women and children, so they are torturing them as they go. And they were just moving truckful after truckful, they said, going that way. And it just reeked. They said it was smell of death, definitely death. So they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop beheading people. They're not going to, the women, they're just going to turn them down. They're going to burn them. They're going to tell them you're either our God or no, our God is the only way. And if you don't believe in our God and take what our God, then we're going to behead you. And how the Biden administration seems to think these are going to be a civilized people. Wasn't it Psaki that said, we have to wait and see, and for them to behave themselves? They haven't behaved themselves since the dawn of time.
It's my understanding Sasaki's on vacation.
UES? I'm not sure what that means. United Arab Emirates?
Nope.
So, not only that, once the Taliban, and I don't think they're going to go for anybody being in charge with them, because they get that seat. Not only with the what is it, the Arab Emirates, they get a seat there, but they also get a seat with the UN, where they get to vote. And that's one of the biggest things that these allies said that don't need to happen, is once you start letting terrorists into the world of nations, it's just the start of it. It'll just give, they said, the cartel in Mexico or any of these other ones with the UN, the chance for other terrorists to go and take these countries, and so they can have a rule and say.
It's my understanding that for the most part, the CCP has taken over the UN.
Yeah, well, when they came over, Larry, they had that meeting with Biden, and Biden was really wanting them to help them shut the country down. And not only that, but to list conservatives as terrorists, and they wouldn't do it. And that's surprising to me. That is really surprising that they didn't go for it. And they basically said, no, we don't want no part of it. And so basically they lost the UN even coming in, because they keep saying the National Guard, back to what I was saying, to basically shut us down and go into a police state. And a lot of people know the police state from Alex Jones. Well, the problem is they can't get no one to police for them. And I think that's what they were trying to get the UN to do. And the CCP in China, or CCP, said, no, we're not going to do that.
Well, there's something that they're trying to accomplish, the deep state, and it's supposed to be, I can't remember the term, but that the country, and America just being the next one, says that we can't control our citizenry. We need you to come in and help us. And so that's what the process that I think was the Secretary of State, I can't remember his name, or worked with the UN to come in here. And so General Milley actually set up a site for him in Virginia to come in and set up shop. So,
well, Milley, it was the UK and India that said that Milley and Kirby, I think that's the guy that was speaking today, with the state,
Milley, he might be, he's a spokeshead now that they got deep states utilizing.
Okay.
He's
They
no longer,
said
he's not no longer in the joint chiefs of staff. Huh?
But they were saying they ought to be ashamed of themselves because of the lack and the basically putting the white flag out on the in Afghanistan and surrendering and ruin just totally made it unsafe for the whole world right now. That's what they're
Yeah.
saying. Now the whole world's not safe because
That's
of
what the guy
Biden putting
from
out the
that's what the
white
guy
flag.
from Israel. That's what the guy from Israel said. That the is
India
thrown.
said it too. There was quite a few of them. They're mad. They're definitely mad. And not only that, but they said that with everything else going on, and not only in our country, but what they're letting the CCP do, that Biden basically, it, they thought it was just a little white flag on the White House. Now they say it's a big white flag
Okay,
that they had just brought our country down.
I need to address what Mary just said. We are not safe. Okay, keeping in mind that we have the alliance in behind the scenes. There's a lot going on behind the scenes in America, and it's not just when and we look at if we want to look at this as is Trump going to come back or is Trump not going to come back? It's I want us to have a really good understanding. It's not about Trump. It's about humanity and saving the world. Okay, it's way more than Trump. Okay, and the world is depending on America getting this right. The whole world outside of the United States understand that Biden is not our wasn't elected president. He stole the election, and
Mhm.
that's the other countries around the world. That's what they understand. They're just waiting for America to fix the problem, and everybody's thinking that the way that we fix this problem is to bring Trump back in as president, and is if we're going to hang our hat on that, then we're not going to go forward as a nation. What Trump wants is that we, the people, stand up and fight for our freedom, you know, and then it isn't Trump coming to save the day. It's a bottom up solution to bringing our constitutional republic back to us, we, the people. And, and that's when Rand Paul was talking about being disobedient and things like that. Don't stand up. And you see people across the U.S. now finally starting to wake up and saying, no, I'm not taking the vaccine. No, I'm not wearing a mask. No, I'm not doing this. No, I'm not doing that. Their people are actually showing up at these supervisor and school board meetings saying no. And I guess there's a couple counties in Texas, they actually kicked their school board out and they took over and made their own rules. And so America's finally waking up. And this is what, Trump has done his job. He's got all the evidence on everybody, but he can't move forward effectively until the American people stand up and fight for their own freedoms. And it's got to be we, the people, that's got to do it. We've got to go look at our school boards. We got to look at our supervisors. We got to vote all these dregs of politicians out, and we have to start from the local area, and we're going to work all our way up. And the reason why Trump and the alliance is taking so long to get to this point where the military can take action, because military is the only way that we're going to get this resolved. And the military already knows about the election. The military sat with President Trump in a skiff and watched the election be stolen. You know, and when we talk about Mike Lindell, they said that he was given all of the data from the election. Well, he was given all of the data from the election on January 9th after the legislature failed to do their job on January 6th. And so everything that you see from Mike Lindell, that was given to him by the military. Okay. And one of the things that I'm sad to say is it's taken so long because there's so many people being impacted in the U.S. right now by all the waiting for the alliance to resolve this issue. I understand that it's going to be resolved. I'm confident that that's what's going to happen. And when you see all this other stuff going around on in the world, it's the deep state trying to do all of this. When I talked about false flags, there's all these activities going around the world trying to take our eye off of the Arizona audit, because as soon as you find out that that the election was stolen, the American people are going to start coming apart at the seams, okay? And they're really going to start fighting back. And not only that, it's going to end up being a worldwide situation where the other nations are going to say, well, what about our election? Did something go wrong there? And this has been the plan, was not just America, not just Trump. It was to help the entire world. But they have to take care of America first, because where America goes, the rest of the world will follow. And so, and the sad part that I wanted to bring out is that when they move forward on everything else as it goes on, when they say that 95% of the legislature is going to go, well, who's going to replace them? I mean, how are we going to govern our country if 90% of our legislature is gone? So they had to make sure that they had replacements for them, and they've been taken so long in 2021 because all these rhinos are starting to identify themselves as rhinos, and so so everybody, we the people, are starting to realize who we can and who we can't vote for, because what the alliance is bringing back in this constitutional republic is power to we the people. We get the power of the vote back, and so that's why it's taken so long. They want to identify all these rhinos. For the most part, the Democrats are who they are, but you also don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. So they're trying to be judicious in who's going to move forward with them. Okay, and so they're not having. Well, they're putting out a lot of disinformation, so that and disinformation is being put out by both sides. But on the alliance side, they're putting out disinformation because they're trying, with how deep and wide this deep state is, they're trying to identify as many as they possibly can. And it's not just the president, the legislatures, it's that whole layer of federal employees. It's the state governments, it's the local governments, the law enforcement, it's the judicial branch, it's the education system, and everything that's going to be coming out is going to be earmarking and hammering each one of these things. And so when I did that one thing, it says it's going to, as soon as it comes out, it's going to go hard and fast, so that the news media is not going to be able to spin anything. It's by the time they spin one thing, they got 10 other things behind them that they're going to have to spin, and so it's going to get a point in time. Something you need to look at is something called Starlink and Project Odin, ODIN. So look up those two things. I think Starlink is a satellite system that can override the news media. And they just did a EBS, Emergency Broadcasting System test. And it's my understanding that Apple blocked the EBS from coming out. Only 12% of the country got the EBS. And so they've identified, they were able to identify here that some problems, if they try to use EBS to send out information to the American citizens, it can be blocked. And so they've identified that. They've identified the hackers at the symposium. I mean, everything has just been just a sting operation that these deep state people are just walking into. And when I say deep state, Democrats and rhinos, Republicans are just as much a part of this as the Democrats. So, and when they say they have it all, they have it all. And they're just getting to a point where if they were to just to fix the election, you continue to have all these people in office, all these people in the legislature, all the people in the federal workforce, all those people would still be there. Okay. And so all you did was just fix the election. All the people were still there. They're trying to get all of them. They're trying to take them all down. And that's why it's taken so long. The first 4 years, when Trump came in, there was no way possible that he could do anything, because if he had a corrupt legal system, and he had nobody replaced the people that were bad. They had to build everything. And the other thing, when I talked about devolution, it's a military operation to devolve the U.S. government away from Washington, D.C., and it's a military operation to bring the constitutional republic back to a civilian leadership. When the military pulls the trigger, they don't want to be in charge any longer than they have to. Once they do all the things that they need to do, they want to turn it all packaged back to a civilian person that the American people want as their president. Okay, and so because the military is built to take orders from the civilian leadership, and so that's how our military is built. So, long story short, be patient. It's gonna be corrected.
So that's all I got. And there, to let everyone know, there won't be no Legends of Myths and Monsters tonight. I'm still pretty sick, and I'll be in there in the morning, but I'm going to postpone it since we did a 2-hour show or more. So, Larry, if you want to look through and see if there's any comments or questions for us, or anybody wants to add it in now. But no,
Okay.
Legends of Myths and Monsters going to be, I don't know if I'll postpone it or do it on another date. So,
okay. Just Me, JB, made a really interesting comment. I am pretty sure the Taliban are actually white hats. I mean, if you look at the video, there's a mega hat in the video sitting on a shelf. I mean, come on, man. And when I said that if Russia is tooting its horn, it might not be tooting its horn. There's a whole alliance sitting behind the scenes here, waiting for Trump to pull the trigger to do what needs to do, in which the rest of the world's going to follow. And when I talk about BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and I'm trying to remember what S was, but so they have an alliance sitting in the back there, and believe it or not, China, there's a Xi Jinping, and then there's a CCP. So keep in mind that China is totally different than the CCP, and so do some real research into the CCP and find out what their status really is today. And so, but bottom line is that the deep state is going to fight to the bitter end. They're not going to give up until they've been arrested or whatever. So and it's going to get worse. The deep state are going to pull out all stuff. It's going to get worse than it is today, and they might even try to start a World War III. So, and it might has something to do with nuclear devices or plants and things like that. But can you say that for certain? I can't. But I heard that basically what their plan is to try to put fear in and keep the people's attention off of the Arizona audits and the things that are going to follow that. So
I didn't. Just Me, I didn't get it on my phone either here, so I don't think Arkansas had it.
I didn't get it. So well, they have about 12% of the people that got the emergency broadcasting message. So, and I don't see new comments. Okay, we got some.
Okay.
I think that's it. Just me. I didn't hear that, but did you all see the post today that said Taliban wanted to talk to Trump because they don't accept Biden as the leader?
I seen that one today.
I'm gonna have to go look that one up. That was good. No, like I was saying, when he said that Taliban may be white hats, I might agree with that. I don't know. It's just there's just so much. There's just so much crazy stuff going on that you think that the deep state would be smarter than what they are and not do the stupid things that they're doing. So I'm thinking they're being made to do it. I don't understand what's with the deep state today. All the things that they're doing is just crazy. So I almost feel like they're being forced. I wish I was a fly on the wall somewhere. Okay, that's all I got.
Okay.
And I'd like to finish with a prayer because I don't think I prayed at the beginning. I just went off. Bad me. So,
Both feet.
dear Lord and Heavenly Father, we worship you, we praise you, we glorify your wonderful name. Lord, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Anytime two or more are gathered in your name, you're always in our midst. And thank you, Jesus, for being here tonight. Lord, I lift up everybody that's listening tonight and just ask that you put a hedge of protection around them, give them peace, comfort, and calmness in that you're in charge, Lord. And as things move forward in the U.S. and the world, that you're going to put together a solution that will be a blessing to all Americans and the citizens of the world. Lord, I look up to you and lean in on you, God, and not my own understanding, and requesting that is how you're going to make it go, and just give me peace of mind that will be your will, and in all cases, Lord, your will be done. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. So,
and share, everybody, share tonight's show. It was a good one. And hit that like button, and reminder to get the bell. I keep getting messages from YouTube saying their bells aren't sticking. So keep getting that bell if you're not getting notifications. So, and we thank everybody for watching tonight. We've sure enjoyed it.
it's always a blessing to me. And thank you, Ellie, for coming on tonight. So I appreciate it.
So good night, everybody.
Good night. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and give you his peace. And that peace always comes from the grace of God. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Good night. Get well soon, Ellie.
Yes.